Yes, doing casework largely without visiting the buildings is challenging, not least because it's really hard to know what bits of a building a developer or heritage consultant is not showing you. It's very, you need to keep your mind alert for the views you've not been shown, or whereas if you're actually walking around a building, you're far more physically aware of the full extent of the site. I think that we have adapted surprisingly well to a largely virtual existence. But definitely we are absolutely raring to get back to actually physically going and looking at buildings and having those conversations with building owners and planners on site, where it's really possible to get to the essence of what the case is all about. So anyway, I've just brought a few slides today, and I thought I should start with some really good news. So this is the Wood Street Police Station, by McMorran and Whitby from 1963 to 6. It's a grade 2 star listed building, and we were really worried about a proposal here to maintain it as a police station, but to put a massive lift tower up the side of the building and really radically alter it. We worked with our sales architects who helped us do a visual to show that it could make a very charming boutique hotel. And we were absolutely delighted that seems to be what will happen. I very much hope that that's not going to be derailed by COVID, but that seems to me to be a really good example of a building that was built for a purpose that has evolved and really become something quite different, particularly with the security demands that modern policing has. It really wasn't very compatible with this building, and I think it's definitely been for the best that it will be sold and given a new use that's much more sensitive to the actual physical fabric of the building. Oh, now. Now it's not letting me move forward. I'm not sure why. Let's try this. Ah, there we are, good. And then another positive was the listing of the IBM building by Lasden, which you can see it's the building on the left. It's the building next door to the National Theatre. And this had been on our radar for a while, but it had been considered too young to list unless there was a significant threat to it. That's the case. We can't get buildings under 30 years old listed unless they are thought to be at risk of demolition or very, very substantial alteration. There's been a scheme here to put on a huge roof extension and also to fundamentally change how the building meets the Riverside Walkway and the facade that runs along parallel to the side facade of the National Theatre. So we put this building in for listing, and it was successful, and we have gone through several iterations of revised scheme, and we are that's how it looks at the moment. And I think particularly to note the canted brick sort of moat-like structure around its base. We wanted the new scheme to maintain some sense of that and some sense of those freestanding columns and the rhythm of those. The original scheme also pulled those upper tiers of the building forward and really kind of fundamentally altered its geometry and its sculptural form. So listing, I think, has been a really good tool here to enable us to have far more clout and far more effectively organise, negotiate a scheme that is much less damaging to the original building. That was the original proposals. And on the right shows you where we have got to now. So we've also obviously been thinking about what specific impacts COVID might have on our built environment. And one thing that we are particularly concerned about is the future of department stores. we have launched a campaign about department stores. We're asking people, and you as our members, please do, if you haven't already done so, send us any examples of department stores local to you that you know are threatened, maybe standing empty, haven't reopened post-COVID. We are wanting to put pressure on Historic England to list more of these buildings, and we are also wanting to look at ways that we can demonstrate how these buildings can be effectively made into viable, or to put to viable alternative uses, be it sort of food hall, leisure type uses, or residential or office on upper floors. So that's going to be an ongoing project through 2021 and probably into next year. And then Claire Price, who does all our churches casework, has been inundated with applications for adaptations to enable social distancing, like this one, all these screens to allow the congregation to spread widely, and also applications to do with installing audio-visual equipment so that you can broadcast church services. And obviously, we want to be supportive of churches being able to do this. But what Claire's been very keen to do is to make sure that there aren't sort of short-term decisions made that will be irreparable in the future, particularly in terms of chasing in electric wiring and cables, making sure that everything that's done is done in a reversible way, and with care for the building. And I think that sort of real attention to detail, although it seems perhaps less exciting than the stopping the demolition of whole buildings, is absolutely a crucial part of our work, and something that no one else is going to pick up on. So, and then we issued our buildings at risk list. We try and do this every 2 years, and there are 10 buildings. You can see them all on the website. I'm just going to show you a few of them. The idea of the buildings at risk list is absolutely to try and generate publicity for us. So it's definitely not a list of the 10 most important buildings at risk, or the 10 most severely threatened or anything. It's 10 buildings at risk that we think the press will be attracted to, and that we have lovely images of. And the whole idea is to provide a mix of buildings with a variety of different sorts of hooks. So hopefully that we get take up both in the national and the local media. And I want at this point to say a big thank you to Wendy Akers, who's our volunteer PR person. And I think this year we're really successful with this. We got a lot of press coverage and a lot of radio interviews and a lot of social media interaction on this. So this is Coventry, where we hoped we would be today, and where we really are just appalled that the city really doesn't seem to get the fact that it's largely a post-war city, and that is what it is something that's unique and incredibly special about it. This is the quote that the Guardian published about our views on Coventry. So I mean, I was really pleased that the mechanism of that buildings at risk list allowed us to really get access to the media in a way I think was very constructive. So yes, so there were a few buildings on the list which frankly were just put there to slightly, I don't know, titillate the press, and deliberately proved to be controversial. So the list was published in the week where the London mayoral elections were happening. So we included this: City Hall, which the mayor has announced that he's going to move out of, and moved to Docklands, so this building will be sitting empty. I can't imagine that realistically this building is going to be demolished. I'm sure a new tenant will be found, but it is technically going to be empty, and I felt this was something that would get people looking and talking about buildings and about specifically the threat that buildings always face when an original or first user moves on and the building itself is no longer kind of new and glamorous and it has somebody else's brand kind of stamped upon it. It's sometimes quite hard to find a second owner for a building. So that's that one. And the Oasis Leisure Centre. The Oasis Leisure Centre is kind of not wildly photogenic from the outside, I think, but we thought that this one would be, the press would like this one because it was reputedly where the band Oasis got their name from. And we were, that proved to be the case. And a really interesting building. And I think that we were very concerned that the loss of income to leisure centres across the country would mean that quite a lot of them might be threatened post-COVID. And we put the lawns at the University of Hull, the Gillespie Kidd and Coyer buildings, because these have been vacated again. It's a question of them being redundant. The university, we saw these when we went to Hull a couple of years ago, and I do think they're absolutely gorgeous. A set of student flats arranged around a very gentle landscape. They want to move the students nearer to the centre of town, and so this is coming up for disposal, and it is listed, but we obviously want to make sure that any conversion scheme is sympathetic to the existing fabric. And I think by putting the building on our at-risk list, we very much signalled that we were onto it and that we would be watching. And we have been invited up to a site visit at a pre-application stage to discuss the possibilities for this building. So that feels positive. And then we did have a large number of local authority buildings on the buildings at risk list as well. And I think, for some of these, it's hard to remain optimistic. So they're buildings that we've tried to get listed, and I think in most of these cases we have put a lot of effort and a lot of very detailed research in, but we've not been successful. And I just really wanted to put these in front of people to say, there are still a huge number of very impressive, very high quality 20th century buildings which don't have any protection, which should have, and which are still being considered for total demolition. It's a very different world to the preservation world of our sisters charities such as the VICSOC or the Georgians. I don't think they're very often campaigning against demolition, particularly not against demolition of buildings which are obviously, as you can see, I mean, all these buildings are in really pretty good condition, no major structural problems, and actually reasonably well maintained in each case. So I think just a sort of tragic waste, not just in terms of their architectural interest and their cultural significance, but environmentally, it just seems wicked, really, to be considering knocking down buildings like this. Yes, and then this is what the Guardian published on our buildings at risk list, and they picked up on the Oasis link. So we were. It's always interesting to see which hook people go for. I think we all thought that was a very likely one, and they went for it. But again, this Guardian piece moved on from Oasis to cover almost all the buildings on the list and give them a really good airing. So it was excellent coverage. And I just wanted to finish up with the Golden Lane estate, obviously just around the corner from the office when we're there. And I know that quite a lot of our members live on the estate or are very, very familiar with it. I think I've put this in really just as an example of what I'm sure will become more and more part of our work, looking at how we can adapt buildings to improve environmental performance. The City of London has declared a climate action strategy, and they want to have net zero carbon by 2040. The buildings at Golden Lane have timber windows, which with some metal inserts, loads and loads of cold bridging, and they're also in they're considerable state of disrepair, not surprising given their age. So I mean, it is a very difficult question. I mean, in an ideal world, we would want to keep as much original historic fabric as possible, or to, as a second best, ensure an accurate like-for-like replacement. But we do need, I think, to be responsible and think about to what extent it is possible to improve insulation and to up the U values in this sort of building if we're going to be able to justify their long-term existence. So it's difficult. Designing sensitive schemes to do this is extremely complicated. The number of you know, to do it without altering the facade and without making any of the fenestration ending up looking really clunky is an architectural design task that would certainly be way beyond me. But I'm hoping that, that the city will put together a really good team, and we are obviously in very close negotiation here to ensure that what happens is appropriate and sensitive. And I think that brings me to the end.